Folks, we are live. Welcome to a very special Talking Crit. I
Very
am Eric
special.
Tenkar, the no longer sued motherfucker there. We are demonetized. Got it out of the way. I wanted to get it out of the way. I'm sorry. With me, stage left, right, I have no idea, is Bad Mike Battalato, and from North Texas, and below us is none other than the one, the only, Jim Kitchen.
Golf clap.
Golf clap. Golf clap.
So we are going to have one hell of a show tonight because we've got two humongous topics to talk about. But I just wanted to say something. For those of you that remember, I said several months ago that I was going to drink from the skull of my enemies when the enemy was defeated. And today that enemy was defeated, and I am happily drinking whiskey and Diet Coke from the skull of my enemy. Because
Oh, damn.
ding dong, the Justin Witch is dead.
That's a mighty small skull.
Congratulations, Eric.
Well,
This is one of the things that. Hold on, I think I can take out the.
We got to get Mike a new camera,
Come on,
man.
Skull,
We got
open
to
up.
get you a. Are you on 28.8 dial-up? What's the deal?
It's no. Come on, man. It's 29 now. No. Yeah. So anyway, so yes, I'm drinking out of the skull of my enemies. I'm very happy to be doing this, and congratulations, Eric, for winning your case. And
Thank you.
there's just so much good news to go around. Well, maybe good news, maybe not, because we also today I'm sitting there and I get this urgent message from Eric that the president of WotC has resigned. I'm like, whoa, what the hell? And so I go to M-World, but so we give Morris a hard time sometimes, but M-World's a place to go nowadays. He's doing
Yes.
he's doing a good job lately, and sure enough, she has resigned, and I look at, so I have some opinions. We're all going to have opinions on this. I think this is interesting, but not totally unexpected, considering the quarterly report is coming up, and it's going to be
bloodbath.
It's not going to
bloodbath.
It's not going to be good.
Well,
and so,
yeah, I mean,
as most CEOs, she's going to be
by the
blamed.
way, Mike, her resignation is 2 days, takes place 2 days after. So she's still going to be president to take the hits.
Let's get this out of the way, okay? She resigned.
Let's talk about the big thing. No. Save that.
Right here. This one.
Let's do the victory lap for Eric first, because
that's
the number one.
Wrong big thing.
Right?
Wrong big thing.
Get back on focus, because we really need to talk about the good news that Eric got today.
Right.
Eric, why don't you share the good news?
So the good news is, and I didn't even get a full realization of what the good news was. I'm literally sitting outside my niece's school. Rachel's going to pick her up. I'm sitting in the car, and I get an email notification from a court listener that there's an update in my case. And it's immediately followed by an email from my lawyer, which just says, I haven't read it yet, but your case has been dismissed.
Woo!
So that's what I did. I was like, holy shit. And then I got to read it a little bit more. Dismissed with prejudice. And
meaning he cannot refile. He cannot refile, as if he would want to, but he's stupid.
Right.
He's very stupid. So you never know. I mean,
so by the way, folks, after this live stream, go to Tabletop Taproom. That's Tom Veralt's channel. Tom was going through the paperwork, through the order, and did a great job highlighting all the places where the opposition was called out for their screw-ups, which is a wonderful thing to see, because I know I had some excellent attorneys on my side, and I know what my opposition was. And excellent is not what I would use to define them. So you get what you pay for, right? You literally do get what you pay for. So I want to thank the community for all the support you've given me over the last, believe it or not, year and a half of this fiasco. And it was a fiasco for one reason and one reason only: to shut up a potential witness in the WotC case, where TSR, Lanas, and Dutton Hobby Shop Museum sued WotC. All right, and I was apparently a potential witness, but I wasn't yet served. And since I wasn't served as a witness, this is a way to get me out of the mix. Well, guess what? I'm back in the mix. And I'd like to say one thing, that there are winners and there are losers. I know what side I'm on.
Or as WotC said, maybe everybody won, right? I mean, we could have all, like they said, we all won. Wait.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, in this case, no. Eric won. Eric won. We're not all winners because Eric's the winner. We're not all winners. Sorry.
So let me talk about the one elephant in the corner, right? So the case was dismissed, right? So let's all give a cheer and a toast to Eric for riding out the storm of stupidity.
Here.
Right? And then let's also recognize, though, the problem is, if you aren't familiar with anti-SLAPP laws for frivolous lawsuits, per the definition of things in New York, Eric stood an excellent chance of having his lawyer's fees recovered from the plaintiff. However, whoa! Hey, Mike? Jeffrey Tubin, knock it off, man! Seriously. Whoa! Like, I know you're excited, but seriously. Oh God, he's back. Okay, so let me finish talking about this. Really and truly, I'm a big believer in what goes around comes around, right? And so, unfortunately for Eric, in the tavern, the financial burden of defending himself against this now dismissed lawsuit, he did not get to recover his expenses because of the federal laws around SLAPP. And so I think Mike and I need to sort of put our heads together, and Eric's going to have to agree to this. But I think what we're going to do is in a week or so, we're actually going to look at setting up a GoFundMe for fans of this and the efforts of the tavern and everything that Eric has done to drag screeching and screaming into the daylight the lesser known pond scum of oatmeal wrestling. So what we want to do is we want to actually try to help Eric recover some of the costs. We're going to sort of put our heads together and noodle this around. But I want to say this to the audience, right? Like, when this kicks off, Eric has done a service in regards to all of this that few people have. He was willing to pretty much fight tooth and nail to drag the celestial shithead into the light of day. There's nothing worse than somebody trying to actually intimidate a witness from being somebody to testify. This was exactly what that was. It's been dismissed with prejudice, but we could all sort of come together as a community to help Eric cover back some of the expenses. And I'll let Eric, when the time comes, I think Eric can talk to what this has been to he and Elrica of Melniabone. But we'll figure all of this out.
Thank you.
Look, I've been with Eric through this for the past year and a half, and anytime you have to do something in court, normal people like us don't go to court all the time, and so when you have something like this where you're having to trust lawyers to do these things for you, it's nerve-wracking, and I just can't even imagine how Eric have felt the last year and a half, how Eric and his wonderful wife have felt, but I just felt for him the whole time. It's just such an injustice, and you're so angry, and there's nothing you can do except say, well, hopefully things will work out in the end. And I'm just so glad they did. But I just know this has been a burden for you, Eric. I mean, you don't show it most of the time, but I know it has been.
Listen, honestly, no matter what the results were, if I changed how Rach and I lived and I dwelt on it all the time, I would have been the loser. All right, I wasn't going to do that. I was still going to go to my conventions and even with Rachel's cancer diagnosis, we were like, we're going to go out and live life. All right, you don't let this stop you. But I will say this: when I got hit with that initial C and D, and this, cancer now. Oh yeah, I know he's worse than cancer. I understand, Rach, but when I got hit with that initial cease and desist, what stood out on that cease and desist was it wanted all my communications about Wizards of the Coast or with Wizards of the Coast or anybody I spoke to about Wizards of the Coast. So it told me right from the start why I was being hit. There was no deception in it, So, listen, I was a cop for 20 years, the NYPD. One thing you don't intimidate me, and I'm going to fight back when I know I'm right, which is what I did.
But
Eric,
but Eric, I think there's a really good point here that you're not quite hitting on, that you and I have talked about previously, which is tell everybody what your lawyer said when he realized that you were a journalist. Tell the folks about that conversation.
So, my lead attorney Dan, who's a partner in the firm, when we had this initial conversation about what was going on and why I was being sued, he's like, I explained the situation. He goes, "You're explaining journalism to me." I go, "Well, in my community, I am in a lot of ways. I am an investigative journalist, and I spent my time in internal affairs. I look for truth. I don't look for preordained, guilt or innocence or this or that. I'm a truth searcher when it comes to this." He goes, "You are a journalist," and I go, "What?" Apparently, Pew Research believes so, since they've included me in a research survey. So he's like, "Excellent." He goes, "I got news for you." He goes, if at any point you decide that you're going to comply with their request, because we got a letter in the midst of this lawsuit too, which was a demand letter, which wanted me to, again, give up conversations with a number of people. There's a list. He goes, if you were going to comply with this, he goes, we would drop you with the client.
And that made us take him.
Yes, Rachel's like, right. Mm-hmm. That made us take him. Because he was like, I'm not going to allow any of my clients to give up confidential information from people that are their sources. And I was like, this is an attorney that understands. This is an attorney that respects. And I have dealt with attorneys in different ways throughout my career. Some were good, some were bad, most were indifferent. I got to say that the firm that I retained was amazing, and still are. God bless. But again, you get what you pay for, and wasn't cheap.
But more importantly,
I want to do one point real quick, Jim. I just want to say that you were in a unique position, Eric, to fight this, because it cost you personally a lot of money out of your pension. Money I don't have. I don't know what I would have done if this would have been me. I probably would have had to settle with dumbass, because I don't have the amount of money you had to spend. You were in a unique position to fight him, and I was so proud of you, and the fact that you did fight him, and that you and Rachel both sat and decided, we're not going to let this go. We are going to fight this. We're not going to settle. And I have the utmost respect for you, Eric, for that.
It was a mutual decision from me and Rach. And I'll tell you, there's an asshole on the other side who thinks that WotC was paying for my defense. I'll tell you exactly what paid for my defense. My World Trade Center funds. I was diagnosed with the cancer that was 9/11 related, and I was out of work for 11 months from it. And I was never going to file for it until I was retired, and my old CO called me up on my cell phone. He was a friend of mine. When it was this Irish brogue, out of the blue, I hear, "What the fuck is this bullshit?" I'm like, "Paul? I haven't heard from you in like 2 years." "Lad, I just heard from Michelle." I'm like, "Yeah." "You're not filing for the World Trade Center compensation, you mother." He goes, "I sent you down to those fucking buildings. You were there because of me, and you're not going to file?" I go, "Listen, I'm alive. I got through my cancer. I'm alive." He goes, "You got a fucking life. At some point, you won't be alive." I went, "Alrighty then. Don't make me pull rank on you." Go, "We're both retired." He goes, "I don't give a shit." Irish. I was like, "All right." And then I fought. So that's where these monies came from. This, I'll tell you the truth, this is something that I probably haven't told Rach, but in my mind, I have congestive heart failure. I'm theoretically on borrowed time. I do everything I can to keep that time at bay. But if I produce these rates, these were the monies that were going to keep rates, uh, funded essentially, because my pension will end when I pass on. So, it, but it still was a decision we mutually made because somebody decided to sue me to shut up a potential witness in a case that they were involved in. At least that's my view.
And while the financial cost is significant, there is a time, we're all tired of the cliched meme of Captain America saying, "No, you move." This was Eric's moment, and full credit to Eric, right? Where I'm not going to settle with you. I don't care if it bankrupts you, right? I don't bluff. I don't bluff. Really and truly, the great thing is every once in a while you run into somebody who actually believes what they've been saying. We all get tired of the same jokes in this industry, right? And when I say jokes, I mean things like Kickstarters that don't deliver,
Right.
or Kickstarters that have gone abnormally long and not delivered. And you can throw some sharp words Eric's way because he covers these things, but nobody else is covering them, right? Nobody else is holding the feet to the fire to make sure that the people who put money in are actually getting what they're supposed to. And we'll talk about all these sorts of things as weeks and months and years go by, because unfortunately there are people who don't learn these lessons. But Eric is one of the few people in the role-playing game industry who's not only talking about this stuff, but when somebody said, "I want to know who your confidential informants, I want to know who you're talking to, I want the full list, I want to go through, I want to file a discovery motion and get every little kernel of information I can," Eric's the one who said, "Nope, sit and spin. Here, it's in stereo. Figure it out." And really and truly, again, tip of the hat to you, Eric, because there's a lot of people who would have folded before they even would have even thought about asking for help or asking for some money or asking for legal advice. I can think of one other person in the last 5 years where, through a series of circumstances, they got somehow, some way, the legal representation they needed to stay ahead of a problem. And Eric, you're one of only 2 people I know who have come through that way. And hats off to you.
Well, I will tell you, I did blink with the first amended complaint, because with the first amended complaint they added a second respondent subject. So they decided to sue my mother. Now, Lois, aka Rachel, and just to explain, now this is my theory. I can't say for sure that it's true, because if you look my mother up with like those internet searches, which we had a copy of the search that somebody did, and it shows my mother's age, and she's 80 now. She was, I believe, 78 when the search was done. Rachel shows up on the search as being related to me. But the house I live in is in my mother's name. So I can't say for sure why Lois, aka Rachel, was served, but I can make some guesses. So I did blink on that one when I had to tell my mother.
Well, I mean, Eric, do you think that actually maybe he was lonely and they kicked him off of, Granny'sRUs.com, and instead, he thought this might be another way to get in, in on a lot of different levels? I mean,
it's possible.
These bills are supposed to be amazing. I'm just,
I like the way I like where you're going there.
Mm-hmm. I haven't seen a picture of your mother, and I'm sure she's a lovely woman. But when you are, in fact, the game shop king of Lake Geneva, perhaps you need to look around to try to find somebody to. I don't know.
He lowered the price, so we might have to look at our wallets later and see if we can afford it now.
He lowered the price. Oh my God, are we still in 8 figures? We must still be in 8 figures.
What is it now, Eric? How much did he lower it by?
He lowered by a quarter. I think it was a $250,000. I think it's either four. It's either 4.5 or 4.
We're right there, Jim. We're right there. I just need to sell a couple things here, and we'll be okay.
Oh my God, hold on. Let me check my pocket fuzz. Oh wait, nothing.
Oh,
Sorry.
Oh, looks like
Hold
my
on, I've
pocket
got some.
fuzz.
Wait. I have my special belly button lint that I've been saving for just such an occasion. Hold on. Nope, I nothing there either. I got.
There's not a couple $1,000s. No, there's not. Yeah. Oh well.
there's
Oh well. He's gonna stay. He's gonna have that stuck up his ass too for a while because he's not selling that. And
Well, that's
by
the
the
way-
way,
that's
so
the-
he still has
because
his.
of the uncle's case.
By the way, he still has a case against WotC to go on because I know a lot of you saw that he settled a few weeks ago, but Eric explained to me that's not what it looked. He explained that, please, Eric. He still has
Okay.
WotC about ready to stampede on his ass here.
All right, so I'm gonna give a little quick thing. TSR sued WotC to establish the trademarks, some weird ass shit. But once he sued WotC countersued, but they countersued Justin and the Dungeon Hobby Shop Museum. Move forward a bit. Fees are piling up. TSR files bankruptcy. TSR's bankruptcy put a stay on my case and the WotC case because TSR was part of my case. Well, my TSR went to the hands of a trustee, and at the first meeting said to me and Rach, "Why the fuck are you here?" Essentially, it's like, "Oh, well, we're like potential debtors." He goes, "Oh yeah, you're in a lawsuit with TSR." No longer. He goes, we're dropping that. So we were no longer debtors. And once that happened,
But our judge said no to the stay.
well, the stay,
before.
yeah, but it said it didn't. The stay was essentially lifted for us, and it was fine and dandy. The WotC stay is still in effect, and it was a 1-year stay. However, TSR, not the former owner of TSR, but the trustee, the Birchers, appointed by the North Carolina Bankruptcy Court, is in charge of TSR now. And he made a deal with WotC for $15,000. They got undisputed rights to all the trademarks, and TSR dropped its suit, but there's still that countersuit. And WotC said, "Hey, we'll drop our countersuit against TSR, but we reserve the rights to reinstate it later." So it's not with that. It's not with prejudice. It's basically, without prejudice. They can always reinstate it, and they are continuing the case against Justin and the Dungeon Hobby Shop Museum. So, that's gonna, whenever the judge approves of this negotiated settlement, whatever they called it, in the bankruptcy case,
They better hurry up.
the WotC case will then continue. So,
Yeah, he's right. He's still writing checks. He's still going to be writing checks for quite a while. So that's awesome. I love to hear that. Yeah, he will be writing checks for the foreseeable future. So, good
Matt,
deal.
no, WotC paid $15,000 to the remains of TSR, which is now in the hands of a trustee, and the trustee needed monies for essentially the costs that are involved in winding the company down because there were no assets. And if you follow the bankruptcy case, it looks a little fugazi, but apparently there were no tangible assets to be associated with this case. And I don't even know. I honestly, if anybody gets any money from that $15,000, I think the two biggest debtors, or three biggest debtors, are Justin himself through I think either himself or Hardwire Tattoo, his attorney out in the federal case, and WotC, because they weren't paid for over $20,000 and outstanding legal fees. That's part of the bankruptcy. And Michael Hovermail, who put in a claim for, I don't remember what it was, $50,000 or $60,000.
Oh, you mean the volunteer?
Well, he claimed he wasn't paid. I'm just saying.
Uh-huh.
So, but you can read all this stuff in the bankruptcy filing. I have that set on update, so whenever there's an update on it, I always get it. It's interesting. So, yeah,
That's good to know
feel
because
like
I saw a
we've
lot of
given-
people posting afterwards that
Yeah,
well, he
no.
got off of the case, and I was like, no, that's not
No,
what.
no,
So
if
yeah,
you-
that's
if
very
you read
thank
it-
you. Yeah.
If you read the settlement, if you read the agreement, it is signed by the trustee and it's signed by a representative from WotC.
Okay.
I think they're legal vice president or something like that. So those are the two sides that signed it.
Okay, so I think you've done your victory lap. We've talked about we're going to try to organize helping you out. I feel like we've given more time to the celestial shithead than we should.
Oh, definitely.
And I think we should move on to the much. Pour your drinks, boys, because it's been a big day. It's been a big day of news from the Wizards of the Coast.
Bum bum ba.
You sure don't want to curb stop Justin another 5 minutes? We're done.
right?
Yeah, we're done. All right, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Let's go.
So,
Yeah.
so I think the way to preface
Just so
this,
happy
right?
though.
Let's talk about this, right? So first of all, more than anything else, I think Mike, you hit the nail on the head when we had some people in the North Texas RPG Facebook group saying some things they shouldn't, right? Like, I can understand Lorraine Williams not understanding gamers. And I can understand that she came to WotC with no game experience.
Williams.
But let's not make this a discussion with personal attacks. And I'm not saying any of us, but there are a couple of pinheads who shot their mouth off and said things they shouldn't. And truthfully, Lorraine Williams was a successful executive, which is how she got the job she did. I think we're all in agreement that she is a convenient patsy for a lot of things that have been going on well before her tenure. We can talk about missteps that were made under her management, but we all know that the strings are pulled from Providence. But let's talk about the glorious news of Lorraine Williams resigning from from Wizards of the Coast.
You mean Cynthia Williams?
Cynthia Williams. Sorry, Cynthia Williams.
You stuck a Lorraine on there.
You're
having flashbacks. I know. You did. We're a certain generation of us are all scarred by that. So, I'll tell you one thing. As a plus for Lorraine, she outmaneuvered Gary. If you read John Peterson's book, she outmaneuvered him, and that's how she got the company because he underestimated her. So whatever you say about her, yes, she was not a gamer. Yes, she was dismissive to gamers. I don't know if this Cynthia Williams is any better because just reading her latest interview, she makes a big point of saying that she once watched her brother play D&D in the 80s. I think that is the full length of her experience having games because what we have here is we have somebody who's an executive, a suit, as you may say, who's put in charge. Now, look, she was only there for 2 years. So anything that happened, like for instance, Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate was in production way before she got there. So yes, it was a huge moneymaker last year. It did really well, but she has nothing to do with that. That was planned 7 years ago, 7 years ago. Just like that, where she shouldn't probably get credit for anything. I don't know if she should get credit for anything bad that happened because they just stuck her there you're just a figurehead. That's all she was, a figurehead. And like I said, I want us all to talk about. I mean, whoever wants to go first. I have a whole convoluted explanation of this. If anybody wants to go before me, that's fine. But I
want to go dead last.
Well, let me go then. So okay. So I look at it this way. So in the last year, we've had misstep after misstep from a company, and so let's first of all, let's get this straight. Magic the Gathering makes money, way more money than WotC by extremes, right? I mean, so really, when we're talking about WotC making money, we're really talking about Magic. But let's throw D&D in there also. But Magic is the number one breadwinner in that coupling. Okay, so when this takeover happened, they appointed a bunch of Microsoft and Amazon executives to run the company. There's no gamers for the first time in history. There are no gamers in charge of the D&D brand. They're all executives. I don't think that she had to do much. The problem was, even with the little she had to do, it was misstep after misstep after misstep. The stock has tanked. The company lost over several billion dollars last year. The movie, while I personally enjoyed the movie, it cost $250 million to make it. It made about $300 million. That's not a success. That's basically what they call a break-even proposition there. While the Baldur's Gate game was a huge success, mysteriously talks have fallen through with Lauren, and they're not going to do any DLCs or follow-up for one of the most popular games. It won Game of the Year and won every Game of the Year award. So they can't even build off the success of the one thing they did right in the last few years, which is the Baldur's Gate game. Then they have this 50th anniversary rollout, which I think has been tepid at best.
I got a word.
We have. But so I think what we're looking at, and then as Eric has pointed out, we have quarterlies coming up. The last quarterly was awful. This one's going to be horrific. And so when this happens in companies like this, when the figurehead, which she is, the figurehead, really has little or nothing to do with the success of the company, the easiest thing to do to make your stockholders happy is you shove them out the door. Now, I'm saying this was a resignation because this was a shove out the door. This was not a resignation. Unless in the next few weeks we hear that she has a medical issue or somebody in your family has a medical issue. That is the only reason that you quit a job without someone not in place and only given less than 2 weeks to get your ass out the door. What usually happens in this case, for anybody that knows how companies work, is 6 months ahead of time they'll say such and such is leaving the company, and here is such and such, and this is their appointed successor, and so they will be showing them the way for the next 6 months. No, I'm sorry, you don't get 11 days. That is fishy, extremely fishy. So I think that she's the scapegoat. She's basically a scapegoat. I think that she had very little to do with what went wrong with WotC, but somebody has to pay the price, right? And she's the president, so it's easy to fire the president and then put somebody else out there and say, look, we're changing everything, because the stockholders are not going to be happy when the quarterly is released at all. Look at the stock. Pull up the stock and see what the stock was doing years ago. What it's doing now.
Oh yeah,
it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So I'm just saying is that this is not an absolute shock. This is just something that businesses do. She got a golden parachute. Okay, she got a golden parachute out the door. She'll in a few months she'll be working for another branch of Microsoft or Amazon, whatever she does. She'll be doing something else. She'll be at some other company. She wasn't a good fit to write this ship, because she has no knowledge of Dungeons and Dragons. She has no knowledge of magic. She has no knowledge of the product. She in this case, when the company is losing this much money, you need somebody with a plan. And the thing is, she was not a plan person. She was a bus driver. She is not somebody that's going to do a plan. So anyway, that's my take on it. I'm not shocked, but I also think that she's being made a scapegoat for the company. But that's just the way the things go in CEO land, right? You get the golden parachute, you fall on your sword, you go on to the next job. So don't feel sorry for her. Anyway, who's next? Eric.
I'm writing a lot of notes.
That's mine.
I'm filling my screen with Post-it notes, boys. Keep going, Eric.
All right. I'll take the baton next. All right, so let's look at Cynthia's history. What happened under her watch? All right, the OGL fiasco happened under her watch. The Creative Commons fiasco of giving away parts of the IP that was under lock and barrel before happened under her watch. And by the way, that Creative Commons thing was a quick, let's make this shit die down so we don't affect the sales of Baldur's Gate 3. All right?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't affect the sales of the movie tickets. All right? The movie released under, and again, this is all stuff that was started under somebody else's leadership, possibly Cox, but she, if it did well, will get credit, and if she doesn't do well, she doesn't get credit. But I think most importantly is look at the release date for D&D 50th anniversary. D&D Forever, D&D 1, whatever we're calling it now. D&D 2024, of which only 2/3 of it releases in 2024. September, for the Player's Handbook. I think November for the DMG, and then the Monster Manual comes out in like February or some shit like that. Now,
Who needs monsters?
why?
We don't need monsters.
But why are we staggering the release, and why is this release coming out so late? My opinion, and it was something that somebody else in the chat was talking about a bit, possibly Zaxxon, yes. I believe the VTT is horribly behind. Okay, it is over budget, and it's not going to. When they released those release dates for 5e at PAX, and then unreleased the release dates for 5e at PAX, and said, "Oh no, that was just like with the first disclaimer. It was written by some intern that didn't know what they were doing, and they shouldn't have put it up." I believe it was Glicker himself on Roll for Combat that said that every other book that was listed for 2024, those release dates stayed. It was only the core books. Now, that means the core books are done, in my opinion. I suspect the core books are done, but the VTT isn't. Now, the last time Wizards tried a mutual VTT / edition release was 4e. What happened with that? There was no VTT. That was all smoke and mirrors. They are trying to buy time for the VTT release. I suspect we will get a limited alpha, beta, public release with the Player's Handbook, but it's not going to be the release. Then that's their excuse for problems with the VTT and the bugs. And they're hoping that by February, with the full release of the new rules, that they'll have a VTT that can start taking your money, which also means that since this game is releasing so late in the year, they don't know how to celebrate their own 50th anniversary. This has been the most low-key 50th anniversary I could think of any potential product. All right? I mean, this is Dungeons and Dragons. This is going to be your billion-dollar IP. Cox said it. He literally whipped it out and said, "This is going to be our next big IP." And you're not pushing the 50th anniversary? If I wasn't as involved, if I was just a regular D&D player, I'd have no idea 50th anniversary was coming up, because they're not hyping it. They don't care, because they aren't gamers. They aren't gamers. And by the way, the only one that claims to be this an executive is Chris Cox, and he only made that claim so he could push the whole AI initiative at Hasbro. And if you think AI isn't going to become part of this VTT, if not immediately upon release or shortly thereafter, you're out of your fucking mind. There. Jim, take it away.
All right. So I filled up my entire screen with Post-it notes. So I'm going to talk to a whole
I can barely see it. Yeah, I can barely see it.
I know. I'm like hidden here. So, okay. And I have Perry, who's ready to administer all the noises we need. So here we go. Let me talk about this. The movie, terrible timing to do the OGL and have everything go sideways just as the movie was coming out. And I'm going to use this phrase, these are unforced errors, right? Yep. This is red on red, right? This is where you're sitting in the trenches listening to the other guys shooting at themselves. And so the movie time with the OGL is a disaster. But let's talk about Baldur's Gate briefly, right? When the company that makes your unbelievably successful video game says, "Nope, we don't want to work with you anymore. We don't want to make any expansions, and we're done with you." That should be a big tell to everyone involved, right? And I'll come back to that. But let's talk about the 50th. So, Eric, you said something really interesting, which is they don't seem to be recognized. Mm-hmm. And so I'm old enough that, I had 12-inch G.I. Joes. I didn't have
so did I, yes.
Yeah, so other people had to deal with shrinkage, but I had a full hefty 12-inch G.I. Joe. None of this 3.5-inch make do.
But if you put them in the water, their hair fell out.
That's right. Had the Seawolf submarine, still do. I have a monstrous amount of 12-inch G.I. Joe stuff from when I was a kid. Still have it. My son played with all of it. G.I. Joe, the 50th anniversary, came and went with nothing from Hasbro. And so I point that out to people because you need to systematically understand. You need to understand that this is a systemic and systematic process at Hasbro. It's only very, very few properties that they actually will act on and highlight these kinds of anniversaries. And G.I. Joe, which generated unbelievable amounts of income, which brought them back from the brink after Kenner had demolished them with the Star Wars figures. The G.I. Joe American Hero line literally brought Hasbro back from the brink. But they did nothing for the 50th anniversary. Nothing whatsoever. I was in a store today where I got to talking to the owner, and he asked me what I had seen at GaryCon, and I talked about what I had seen at GaryCon, and he asked me what games he should know to bring in the store. And in return, I said, well, how's it going with D&D? And he just paused, and he stopped, and he said, I can't tell you how 5th edition cratered in the store. Like, he still has inventory, initial new release inventory of Spelljammer. He cut way back on Planescape. All the new releases have just seen steady declines, and it goes back to OGL. And have no doubt about this, right? If the store that I go to, which is it's a game store, it's a good game store. Is it one of the greatest? It's not the Sentry Box, right? I worked at the Sentry Box. It's a 28,000 foot game store. It's the apex predator of game stores. But most mom and pop game stores are exactly like the one I was in today. And if they're having trouble from customers coming in and pushing back, I can assure you the ripples are all the way through the chain. So let me get to a different point that everybody seems to miss, right? So putting the hat on from working at Games Workshop, I can tell you that products have an 18 to 24 month cycle of production. From the first moment where somebody says, oh my God, this is a great idea. We should make a game and we should do something about that. You can shorten a cycle, but it has to be something so unbelievably hot that you really, really, really need to make shortcuts, and you really, really need to make all sorts of possible unforced errors to get that product out. But most things are plotted out with 18 to 24 months in advance. Because, and guys, I say this, you have to think backwards. You have to think about your production lead time. You have to figure out where you get in the schedule with your printers. You have to figure out for your warehousing space. You have to figure out getting these products all around the world, because we're not just shipping to North America, folks. We're shipping everywhere. You have to negotiate the printing prices. You have to commission the art. You have to give the artist time to get the art. You've got to lay out the books, all the back end, which means that the moment Cynthia walked in, she was inheriting things that had been decided upon. She inherited all the work that had come from the 24 months prior to the first day she walked through the door. Anything now that is starting to come out, anything that was originated when she started with the company, is what we're starting to see. It's probably within a 6-month window. But Cynthia walked into what she got. And I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair to judge her on poor quality, because she inherited this mess, right? She inherited all this, all the Spelljammer. My God. Spelljammer could have been a lot of things. Yes, there's always the playful side to it, but it could have had teeth. Planescape, a great effort, but really and truly, all these dogs that we're talking about, she inherited that. And the biggest problem, the biggest problem with Hasbro / WotC is that you've got two things going on. You have management that is absolutely tone deaf to listening to the customer. You need to go out and you need to listen to the customer, and you need to put people on the ground who are going to listen to the customer, listen to what they're saying, take notes, and bring those notes back with an unvarnished truth. And you need to listen. There's an amazing thing that happened with 5th edition, where it literally was play tested almost to death. But they had statistical modeling for every single point of discussion that they could see immediately trends in what people wanted and what people didn't want. And it went to the point where they were able to fine-tune 5th edition to being the best version of D&D to meet the audience that truly, truly cared, that wanted to play test it, that wanted to play it. But Hasbro isn't listening to the culture. And we can go back to the OGL. We can go back to the common, when they let the commons blow up. And this is Hasbro burning their. I mean, you literally are shooting the goose that lays the golden egg. Yes, Magic is insanely profitable. Hasbro, D&D has had an unbelievable run with 5th edition, and yes, you do have edition fatigue that's going to kick in, but let me talk to of everybody here. I have more experience, a la the person I'm married to, about coming in as a CEO and inheriting a shit show and having to sort it out and figure it out. And none of us are really truly privy to what Cynthia walked into. I do think there's a culture clash. I do think that there is something being driven from Providence, right? And again, all things lead to Providence. All the major decisions get made in Providence. The labor cuts, the virtual tabletop piece, right? I'm sorry, Mike, I cannot forgive you because you made no mention of GleeMax, right?
Oh,
Oh yeah, but really and truly, right? Let's again talk about not listening to your customer. GleeMax. Who the hell thought up GleeMax? Who thought that was a great idea?
or a great name.
Enough people thought it was a great idea that they still executed on the worst name imaginable, and it didn't go anywhere. But all these little moves, all these little things that they're doing are just Hasbro sees Magic, and it's unbelievably profitable. But the problem with D&D in Hasbro's eyes is it's this amorphous sort of book publishing company, but it doesn't have the residual tail, right? If you play Warhammer or 40K or Infinity or any number of miniature games, right? The hardware is your miniatures, is your army. The software are the rules, which is why when I have a Space Marine, I've got a Dark Angels army I've had for 30 years. And every time there's a new codex and every time there's an update, I have some models I got to tweak. I have some models, and I'm going to put them on the shelf for a while. But my hardware doesn't change. It's the opposite of a computer. But Hasbro struggles to get their head around this. And so the only thing they can think of is they want to figure out a way to monetize this by getting everybody to abandon the book side, the physical side, and go virtual, right? Well, everybody else is dumping movies. Nobody has DVDs or Blu-rays. Best Buy has gotten out of it. Walmart's moving out of it. Physical media, okay, but that's not how RPGs sell. That's not how RPGs are used. And what you have is you have a philosophy on high that says we need to take this into a digital medium where we can get microtransactions. And if you want to use that monster in the virtual tabletop, you'll have to pay $1, $2. Or, and my guess is, when they introduce the monster manual and everything into a virtual tabletop, it will be like the Goblin Index at Games Workshop, right? A goblin is worth a point. An orc is worth 10 points. And an orc boss is worth 25 points. And you can go on up there for dragons, right? My bet will be that when they virtual tabletop and they have monsters, you will pay a price based on the threat rating of the monster. Where dragons, introducing them in the virtual tabletop, will be like $25, and kobolds will be $1. But they'll do this because this is a way that they can capture more income. They get people locked into the virtual tabletop. They bring them in this way. They can go into modeling, and I don't resent that. But I do resent the absolute disdain that Hasbro management has demonstrated time and time again with, look at Baldur's Gate. And I come back to Baldur's Gate, right? When the company that made this unbelievably successful game says, I don't want to deal with you anymore, right? If you look around, the signs are there that Hasbro has ticked off enough people that have been doing work with them in the last few years that they're walking away from it. Now, there are some people who are absolutely invested in Hasbro, right? There's no shortage of licensees like Kid Robot or um, uh, what's WizKids, and some of the
WizKids.
others where they depend on that income. They depend on this, right? But guess what? The store I was at today, their WizKids wall, and I mean they had a wall of WizKids that was 40 plus feet. I actually walked it off one day. They had a WizKids wall that was 40 feet wide, and it's down to a single 5-foot wide gondola. And that tells me the contraction's coming, right? I joke that Funko Pops are the precious moments of our generation, right? In 30 years, you're going to see these at every yard sale, and people are going to be chucking them. But WizKids and all the other licensees have got to be looking at how D&D has been going, how it's been selling. And again, everything that we're seeing hit the market now is stuff that they spent the last year and a half, 2 years developing. And yes, RPG Grandma made the great point. If you're a licensee, you're looking at all of this and you're simply saying, what the hell did they do? Why did they do this? We don't understand. Now, they've announced a couple of things for 50th anniversary D&D. They've announced the Tales from the Golden Staircase or Tales from the Outside Shitter, whatever it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to have S3.
Yeah.
And then they're talking about the book releases later this year. But there is no specific thing that truly is a throwback to the original roots of D&D 50 years ago. It doesn't matter. They don't see this. Why would you celebrate the past when what they're trying to do is they're trying to blaze a way to the future? I have been through this discussion with avid G.I. Joe collectors. Two of the largest G.I. Joe collectors in the entire world are two friends of mine. And I'm not kidding, right? They are the Bill Meinhardts of G.I. Joe collectors. There's two of them. And they watched the 50th, and I just can remember, right, the entire year. Maybe they're going to announce something today. Maybe they're going to do something today. And it was crickets. It was absolutely crickets. So this does not surprise me. None of this surprises me. But Cynthia Williams came from a background where she was brought in. They needed somebody to take over. She inherited a mess. She was trying to do what she can. But Chris Cox, these people are irrelevant. They really are irrelevant to our hobby, to what we love. The hobby is moving past them. One of the most interesting conversations I had today with the store owner was, what game did I hear people talking about? And I said, I saw a lot of games and I heard a lot of things, but I'll tell you the one game that I heard about more than anything else, and that I keep hearing about more than anything else, and that's Shadow Dark. Yep. And he goes, really? I've never heard of it. And I said, okay, I'm not telling you need to stock 12 copies of Shadow Dark. Not my point. I said, but I watched Black Blade Publishing brought 50-some copies of Shadow Dark to GaryCon, and they sold them out before noon. Holy shit. If that's not a game on the rise, I don't know what is. And guess what? Shadow Dark doesn't have anything to do whatsoever with D&D or anything for 5th edition. Shadow Dark can carve out its own world. It can make its creator a shit ton of money. And Wizards gets none of that. I had a little bird that whispered some things in my ear at GaryCon about everything at Hasbro. And a lot of it is stuff that I am just not going to talk about publicly. But what I will say is that Hasbro has to figure out a way to earn trust back. And Cynthia leaving is, yes, I think it's somebody falling on the sword for these things. Because if you can't turn a company around, yeah, you have to leave. Mm-hmm. Cynthia's not getting a golden parachute. Don't kid yourself. There's no golden parachute for Cynthia. Cynthia's going to take a few months. She's going to start looking around. She'll find somewhere else to go. And she has great experience. But the problem is she was working for a company that employs a lot of creatives. And frankly, I always think about this, right? Let's think about the low time at Wizards of the Coast. Let's think about the low time at TSR after second edition came out, right? Second edition comes out, it's everywhere. It's in Walden Books, it's in B. Dalton, it's got Random House distribution, it's going like crazy. And then Gary's gone. And I'm sorry, Gary left before second edition came out because they wanted to get rid of Gary.
Right.
But by that time, but after second edition, after a couple of years, and I think a more accelerated time frame because of the reduced size of the market, D&D falls by the wayside. Think of how long it was between second edition and third edition. And WotC made good moves with third edition, but then fourth edition. Let's talk about fourth edition, because that's where we are right now. I think that's what we're really looking at. I think we're looking at fourth edition redo. They're going to have a bunch of books. Some of them will sell, some of them won't. But the hobby has discovered that there's a wide, wonderful world of amazing things out there that can offer them something that isn't, hey, every book looks like every other book. And I don't want to go to a virtual table. Shadow Dark's one book. Shadow Dark is literally one book. I love old school essentials, but Jesus Christ, Shadow Dark is one single book. I don't have to buy other books. I've got everything I need. It's clean. Steve Winter was talking about Shadow Dark with me before Gary come. And so that's what sort of prompted me to find a copy and look it up, right? WotC doesn't understand that. Hasbro does not understand that. Hasbro wants to create intellectual property.
Jim, let me ask you a question. I want to ask you. So we're talking about this, going back to your theme of talking about how they just didn't understand the 50th anniversary. Do you think this is related to the fact that there are no gamers in charge right now, and it's all executives, and they just don't see the point of a 50th anniversary? Or, why would you? What are you going to do? This is just another year. It's just another year of putting out product. What are we going to do anything special this year that we didn't do the year before and the year before that? I'm just interested in your opinion. What do you think is the deal?
I think that's a problem, and I'll tell you why. I'll give you the equivalent moment. They're at an oh shit moment. And I'll tell you where they are in the oh shit. So, worked for Games Workshop for the better part of a decade. Loved the company, worked with amazing people. But I would say about 10 years ago, if you looked at what Games Workshop was doing and the miniatures and everything else, it had just sort of hit a stale point. It hit a flat point. And then they hired a new CEO. I think I've told this story, but I'm going to tell this story because it's incredibly relevant, right? And so a new CEO comes in, right? And again, remember, he's inherited everything, right? The production schedule for the next year and a half, that's what he sees. Because it didn't have anything to do with him. It came from the studio, and the studio creates, and the studio sends. So he starts having a look, and one of the first things he did is he went to a games day. Now, I want you to think about Cynthia Williams going to Gen Con, or Cynthia Williams going to GaryCon, or Cynthia Williams coming to North Texas. But Kevin Roundtree went to Games Day. He walked around, and he had a little sign that said, had a word name tag that says, "Hello, my name is Kevin Roundtree." And he talked to people. One of the most interesting things he kept hearing from people at Games Day was, "Hey, when are you going to bring Blood Bowl back?" Right? When are you going to bring Blood Bowl back? You guys never figured it out that you could just release Blood Bowl in time for the NFL season, and I could play Blood Bowl watching NFL games. Why don't you bring Blood Bowl back? But he caught a big earful of this. And so, lo and behold, he goes. After Games Day, we always used to do AARs. We did an after-action report on all the things we had heard or so on and so forth. The best example is Andy Chambers. Andy Chambers, when second edition Space Hulk was coming out, he was at Games Day, and the first person that came up to him said, "Are the new Space Hulk tiles going to match?" And he goes, "No." And he goes, "Well, you're an idiot. Why not?" The next person in the line said, "Hey, are the second edition Space Hulk tiles going to match?" And he goes, "I don't know." And he says, "Well, they should. I don't want to give up my first edition." And the third person shows up to Andy and says, "Are the second edition Space Hulk tiles going to match?" And he goes, "Abso-frickin-lutely." And so Kevin goes back, and in the AAR, somebody says, "Well, Kevin, what did you hear?" And he says, "Well, I heard all about Blood Bowl." And people talked about Blood Bowl. And the head of the studio says, "Blood Bowl? Forget it. as long as I'm the head of the studio, we're never bringing it back. It wasn't profitable. It's a waste of time. It doesn't fit with where we are as a company. Forget it. He goes, okay. And like a good CEO, just because somebody tells you something, right? Somebody tells you that they're confident of something. When you assume, you make an ass out of you and me.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin whips off a request to see the numbers and financials on how Blood Bowl as a product did during its last release. And the next day, Kevin gets the numbers for a day or two. And he starts reviewing them. And he takes a look and realizes that Blood Bowl had been profitable. Every team had sold. Every team was in the black. The game had sold well. It had had a great run. And it had a long miniature tail to constantly. And I want you to think about Cynthia. If she had gone to GaryCon, if she had gone to any of these gaming conventions and had these kinds of conversations, because what would she have said to the staff? What would she have plucked out of the staff, right? Like, Spelljammer? Nobody is talking to me about Spelljammer. Everybody's talking to me about it's the 50th anniversary coming up, but nobody's talking to me about Spelljammer. So Kevin, to continue my little story, Kevin calls the head of the studio up and says, I actually had somebody pull some numbers and did some research, and Blood Bowl sold well. It consistently sold well. So why did we kill it? And the head of the studio sort of hums and haws and says, well, it didn't fit in. It doesn't match our line anymore. I'm not really, I said in the meeting the other day, as long as I'm the head of the studio, it's never coming back. And sort of closes down the conversation and leaves. And a little while goes by. Kevin has his assistant call the head of the studio up. And when he gets in, he says, thank you very much for your service. It's been really great, and we wish you all the very best on your future endeavors.
Oof.
Hold on. Hold on. Save that thought, Eric, because I'm not done. Because then he starts digging around, and he finds out that the studio has been sitting on tons of finished models and amazing things that the head of the studio just felt, well, we don't want to crowd the release schedule. We don't want to put out too many good things. The stuff that people have spent a decade asking us for, we'll put it out in drips and drabs. Games Workshop employs the single largest studio of any game company, even bigger than WotC. And that's full-time staff. I think it's north of 350 people now.
Wow.
And so Kevin, and again, I want you to think about, right? We have two very clear forks in the road. Cynthia gone back into WotC and called in all hands and said, I want everybody in this room. Because we're going to talk about the 50th anniversary of D&D. We have 2 years to get this right. We have 2 years to figure this shit out. And I want you to tell me what it is that we should be doing, because this is what I'm hearing from the customer. And Cynthia didn't do that. But Kevin Roundtree called the entire studio into one room and stood up on a box in front of everybody. And he reminded them of who they were. And he said, my understanding is that we've been sitting on 2 years worth of models. 2+ years worth of models. And I'm here to remind you of something. You are the single greatest miniature designers in the world. You make the best games and the best miniatures that go with them, and you shouldn't forget that. And if you have a good idea, and this is a Thursday, he says, on Friday, there will be an idea box on that wall. If you have a good idea, you put a piece of paper in there, and every week we'll get together, we'll look at all the pieces of paper, and if we think something has merit, we'll have you come forward with a 2-page description of what it is you want. And if it's noteworthy and we all agree, we're putting it into production. And over the next 6 months to a year, all of the models are going out. We're releasing everything. We aren't holding anything back. We pay you to be the best in the world. Be the best in the world. Nobody will ever hold you back from that anymore. So that actually works out to be roughly 9 years ago. If you know anybody in the game retailing industry, Games Workshop put the pedal to the metal and didn't look back. There literally was 2 years where you could not believe the number of releases, the quality of releases. There's a couple of games that I know came out of the suggestion box process And so when I talk about listening to the customer, really and truly, I'm begging people to understand there was an inflection point. Like, we have literally now a great Harvard business case study on 2 different paths they could have taken. And Cynthia Williams never once listened to the customers. Christopher Cox is not listening to the customers. And I'm begging, right, as a guy who's played D&D since my Holmes box set, please put some people in this process that are going to listen to the customers. We've only begged and pleaded for something to recognize 50 years of this glorious hobby, and they can't do it. They just can't do it. And that's why Hasbro's in the position they're in. And when the Hasbro quarterly results come out, we're all going to laugh because they could have avoided this dumpster fire. They chose a different path.
Eric, counterpoint.
Wait. But
Thank you,
here's,
Jim. You said it as good as I could ever say it. I appreciate it.
No, that was awesome.
That's
you know,
pretty much.
They
yeah,
are
that was great.
issuing the 50th anniversary book that's going to tell the whole history of D&D and have the original white box contained within it. But when they pitched it, they also decided we got to take our time out and tell you why not to buy it, because it's going to offend modern sensibilities, and if we could change it, we would, but it's history. So they don't even know how to market shit. It literally blows my mind.
All right, in honor of Jim Ward, I'm going to take one of Jim Ward's Ballotimuses, and you get a Ballotimus wave of shame, WotC. You get a Ballotimus wave of shame. Because really and truly, you had options. You chose poorly.
So we're looking. So we don't have it. Which to me, the fact that there's nobody being introduced as here. By the way, we're getting rid of Cynthia, but here's Seamus over here. Seamus is going to take over. We're getting nothing. So this tells me this was not like a long planned decision. I mean, I don't think companies do that. I mean, that would be stupid. No. But
and there's
who are we looking at for? Are they going to go inside and finally find somebody that has a little gaming experience, like maybe they played D&D last weekend or something, or are they just going to go and appoint Microsoft executive number 437 and say, okay, well, it's your turn. You take over.
So here's the problem, right? Here's the real problem. Again, a C-suite executive has to have a skill set. And Cynthia Williams' skill set was not within a creative industry, right? Didn't she go there from Amazon?
Sure.
Yeah. Yes. Or Microsoft. She was a Microsoft.
Microsoft and Amazon. She was a Microsoft, yeah.
So really and truly, Microsoft is a very different company from WotC. And so you have to have somebody who has business acumen, right? There are times where you have to make hard choices. There's times where you have to essentially pull people together and say, we're going to go in this way. But 50 years of D&D hasn't included, people are asking about Weiss and Hickman. Dragonlance has been a passion project for Joe Manganiello. And it's dead. That's dead. He's been working on that. Somebody mentioned today that there was a Drizzt cartoon that was in the works. It's dead. All these various things that are supposed to have been coming along and are not materializing. And really and truly, when your partners don't want to work with you, when you look around the party and you can't figure out who the asshole is, you might be the asshole.
All right. Here, Jim, I'm going to throw something out at you then.
Okay.
When you're looking, and this is just to say, we've all heard the rumors and they would kind of disprove, but if you're looking to sell a property, you want as few external contracts as possible, because
no. So I disagree with that wholeheartedly, because that ignores everything there is to know about brand management. If I had been Peter and the rest of the folks at Wizards of the Coast, yes, it would have been great to grab that cash. but Dungeons and Dragons now is worth infinitely more than Hasbro ever paid for it. You know, Hasbro bought Magic and has made a fortune from Magic. Hasbro bought D&D, and it's still one of the most recognized brands in the world. Lorraine Williams bought TSR, controlling interest of TSR, for $500,000. I think that's the figure. I can't remember, Mike, off the top of my head. I can't remember what the number was. And she sold it to Hasbro, or to Wizards, for $34 million. Wow. Lorraine Williams did not come out. No, I disagree, JP. A C-suite executive with skill, no. The good ones are the ones you don't hear about. They're the ones who actually make things go along, and who are the folks who figure out how to get to where you need to go. Kevin Roundtree went to Games Workshop, and he had no game experience. But he did have enough experience that he knew you get out and you put your feet in stores, and you go on visitations, and you listen to your customers. When your customers tell you about the problems they have, why they're not ordering your products, pay attention, and you listen to this stuff.
Right.
And really, the thing that gets me about this is you have no shortage of WotC employees who pontificate on various platforms. Pick your social platform, right? They have followers. There's a lot of echo chamber. They talk about problems. But let's talk about another executive CEO who's having a bad week. Because if you haven't seen the news about what's happened with the head of NPR, I assure you, she's having a week. And again, you can have whatever personal beliefs you want, but you got to make sure that you pull back and you don't let this interfere with what your job should be.
Right.
And again, right, the people saying they can't imagine CEOs with talent, that's bullshit, right? Jack Welch grew GE into an absolute powerhouse. Then Jack Welch left. GE has fallen apart. Great CEOs make a difference. Bad CEOs are the ones you hear about. McNerney absolutely gutted 3M, and then he went to Boeing. And how's Boeing doing lately? Yes, right. I can tell you from experience. I can tell you from watching this stuff, right? I see a really critical lack of hearing across the entire organization. You know, if we talk about 5th edition success, and again, look at how 5th edition succeeded. They went out with the biggest playtest efforts ever. They brought data gathering intensely into this operation because they wanted every single tick of what made things work. They knew...
Jim, they play tested for years. They didn't just play test like 6 months. Literally for what, 2-3 years? They play tested for years.
And they took all of that data and it guided them on what they needed to do, right? The thing that just is staggering about this is if you only go to 1 or 2 stores and you keep going to the stores that are close to the office, you keep going to the stores that say exactly what people want to hear, you're not learning anything, right? They need to come to my town, and they need to come to my game store, and they need to talk to the owner about how 5th edition cratered after the OGL and Common Cons, all this fell apart. And they need to talk about, I used to sell this many players' handbooks. I know the owner of the Century Box. Gordon and I get along great. He's one of my best friends. And the number of players' handbooks and DM's guides and monster manuals for 5th edition that he has sold is way into four digits, right? And I don't mean like, 10.00. No, he has sold in excess. The last numbers I heard, he was closing in on numbers close to 2,000, 2,500 copies. I want you to think about a game store that sold that many copies of the player's handbook, or that many copies of the 5th edition DM's guide. And yes, again, edition fatigue is going to come in. But why isn't WotC putting people on the ground, going from town to town to great stores, to podunk stores, to comic shops? They should have surveys. They should be surveying their retailers. They should be absolutely tracking down all the data and understanding where they've screwed up. And the hardest part that WotC and Hasbro have in all this equation is they have to listen. And they have to take the hits as every single hit comes off of a piece of paper. They have to own it, and they have to address it, and they have to fix it. And frankly, they just may institutionally be incapable. And so I think WotC's going to lay fallow for years. And all these people who are internet famous, all these people who are social media famous, and you can pick whichever WotC person you want, right? I think the best WotC people are the ones that listen, who have learned what the people are saying that they want to see, and they're trying to address that, and they're trying to move it in that direction. And then you have people that just see it as we squeeze it and more money comes out of it, and it doesn't matter what we do. And if you look at our nearest competitor, they're 20% of our market. They're 20% of our total market. Maybe the best competitor. Maybe 15%, right? And don't get me wrong, Paizo makes great stuff. But when your nearest competitor is only 15%, 20% of your sales, to Hasbro, they don't give a shit. They don't care. They don't care at all because they're irrelevant.
This is why, and we talk about this all the time, Jim, and you talk about it too. This is why if you love the game that we grew up playing, or even love 5th edition, you support the OSR. Because the OSR is composed of creative individuals who are not doing this for big bucks, who are doing this because they love the game, and they are putting out the game that people want to see. Domanwood, Shadow Dark, all the stuff that Levi Combs, I mean, all these small creators, they're putting out the game that you want to play. And that is what we should be supporting right now, is the OSR.
So let me speak to the person I have fallen in love with because of their maps. I love Alyssa Fadden. Alyssa Fadden. But you know what? There's somebody else, and I have fallen in love with his work. He doesn't get enough credit, and really and truly, my God, every single one of his maps makes my heart sing, and it shouldn't. And he has the coolest name I've ever heard. Skull Fungus.
Oh.
And Skull Fungus makes these wonderful top-down maps, isometric, doesn't matter. If you aren't looking up Skull Fungus, you have failed. Because really and truly, he had a mini book that came out that I am so horny to find. Here, Perry, what do I got to say? That's how excited I am. And really and truly, Isle of Ix, IXX. It's out of print, small print run, screw me, but Skull Fungus makes the best looking, coolest maps I've seen in a long damn time. And he doesn't work for WotC. He doesn't work for WotC. He doesn't work for Paizo. He makes these shit hot cool little maps just because he thinks it's nifty. And my God, you look at these and you're just like,
he doesn't do that. Where's the dice in like cash?
Oh my God, this is better than Viagra and cheaper. Right. Look at it.
Good stuff.
And look at one of the isometrics. Pull up one of the isometrics if you can find it.
I'll find one. Hold on.
But Skull Fungus is the guy we should be throwing money at. And Skull Fungus is the guy we should be hiring to do maps. And really and truly, pastel, worn out Photoshop motherfucker from WotC. Like, why not? Why are you doing this? It doesn't have to be bland. It doesn't have to be safe. It can absolutely be enthralling and exciting and get you going where you look at it and you're just, look at that. Look at the bug. Pull up on the bug. Click on the bug. Look at that. That's what I want to fight. That's what I want to see. I want you to flip a picture of that over your shield and show me that in a game and scare the living crap out of me. Oh my God, it's a bug-eyed monster in a swamp. And go below that one. Go to the isometric map. Go down the next one. Look on that. If that doesn't make you horny for Skull Fungus, nothing can affect you, and you're old and you're dead, and you should go lay out in the sun and expire. Because this is the kind of stuff that comes out of the creativity that is at the heart of our industry and all the things that matter. And so I've talked about. Sorry, go ahead.
It's just corporate versus versus the little guy. I mean, it all comes down to that, right?
No, it's safety over taking chances.
Well, that's what corporate is. Corporate is safety. Corporate is we're going to do this because it's easy.
Safety. Corporate doesn't have to be safety. Corporate can be. Here's the difference, right? It doesn't have to be safe.
Right.
It has to be reliable, right? Nobody wants their favorite publisher to make something that's not exciting. They want to see something coming that makes them go, "Oh my God, I can't wait to own that. I cannot wait to own that. And as soon as I get a hold of that, my life is going to be complete." All right. Would you like the, "Oh my God, I've been waiting for this ever since I heard about it"? I'm going to show you. I put it over my shoulder tonight. God bless them. Marvel heard them. Look at that bad boy
Micronauts,
right
finally.
there.
I
This
was
collects
thinking.
the first
Micronauts.
29 issues of Micronauts.
Oh
And
man, I have
really-
a handful of those.
Michael
Yes.
Golden's art.
I had my own Micronauts, Dan.
Michael
All right.
Golden art's awesome.
So here's the story on Micronauts, right? So Marvel gets the license to make Micronauts, or make a comic book about Micronauts. They get it about the same time that they also get the rights to make Rom the Space Knight. And so lo and behold, Bill Mantlo pitches the idea to Jim Shooter and says, "I got an idea. Let's get Golden and let's let him loose." Now you have to understand that Micronauts came out as a comic book after Star Wars, before Empire Strikes Back, right? Everybody's like, "Holy shit, this whole space stuff is really cool." And Mantlo and Golden sit down and they have nothing to work from. Mego licensed all of the stuff from Tomy, and so just put the toys out, and there was no brand, there was no storyline, there was nothing like that whatsoever. So the two of them decide, "Hey, we're probably only going to have one shot at this. Let's make an unbelievably sweeping space opera and squeeze it into the first 12 issues. And if it goes beyond that, that's great, but we've got a shot." And Micronauts, the first 12 issues of Micronauts, are everything you wanted Star Wars to have, but it didn't.
Absolutely.
Right? You have a guy returning from a 1,000-year voyage. He's ambushed when he comes back. His parents have been slaughtered by the scientist who took over, who's immortal. There's a rebellion. They're struggling. There's a princess hiding in plain sight. There's a warrior race of Acroyers. And by the way, the rightful heir has been usurped by his shitty brother. Oh my God, right? If you're a comic book fan and you want to see what the 70s could do when it was balls out.
But Jim, it gets better, because then they come to Earth and they're tiny and it's Marvel Earth, like Spider-Man's there and shit.
Yes,
I mean,
and the best part
oh my God.
The best part is, all I wanted for Christmas that year was the flipping Micronauts battle cruiser, because
Absolutely.
the heroes get chased to a backyard in Florida, and a battle cruiser shows up, splits into 6 pieces. They get into a firefight around a swing set, and when everything's done, the good guys fly off, and
great.
the teenage kid who is just trying to mow the lawn picks up a dead body of a little Micronaut, collects a bunch of this, puts it in his shoebox, and when he shows it to his dad is like, "Holy shit." Then they go to NASA, because now they got these little aliens and they don't know what to do with them. And they take them to the one guy at NASA they shouldn't, the guy who's in charge of the Human Engineering Life Laboratory, hell, and it all goes to shit after that. So really and truly, if you haven't got this,
great stuff. Absolutely.
it's a great collection. I cannot wait to open it and read it tonight.
Love that.
And again, right? Marvel listened. There are people who love Micronauts. There are people who love Rom the Space Knight. And Marvel has heard all these people clamoring. They finally got all the rights secured. And so if you're a Micronauts guy, the omnibus came out this week. If you're Rom, the first one shipped a few weeks ago, and the second collected omnibus is coming out later this year. And again, Hasbro, WotC, all you have to do is listen to your customers, listen to the voice of the customer, do what they're begging you to do, and understand that they're not doing this because they want you to somehow commit to things you shouldn't commit to. they're literally begging you for the products to buy, and instead, no, peasants, we know which cake you prefer, and you get no cake.
By the way, Jim, so a riff on that. You're talking about Marvel knowing what the customer wants and giving to it. You know who doesn't know what the customer wants and who is absolutely failing right now is DC Comics. DC Comics is doing so bad right now that there is actual serious talks they're going to have to sell off their licenses. Because no matter how terrible the comics are, you still own Superman and Batman and Green Lantern or whatever. But they are failing so horribly because for the last 10 years they have given people nothing what they want. They absolutely screwed up every time.
And let's not forget, Marvel used to be a public company. Marvel got in straits and had to sell the rights, which is why X-Men went to Sony, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
I got nothing.
So yeah, DC is in. So if you get online, look up tomorrow DC Comics. They're in terrible trouble. They're not going to go under because they have Superman and Batman. As long
I think Mr. Gunn is calling me out for my rant. I'm sorry. I went too long.
Superman and Batman will always be worth money, but it's going to have probably DC Comics will be sold in the next few years because they have done a horrific job of giving the public what they want, and not just in the comic book area, but the movie area. Because that's why Marvel Comics is succeeding because the MCU made so much damn money that they're not doing that great either, but they're doing good enough to where doesn't matter because the movies have made so much money. The DC movies were flops because they didn't give the public what they wanted in those either. The Superman movies were.
We want Superman to be a hero. We don't need an anti-hero Superman.
Zack, I don't mind Zack Snyder, but those movies weren't. That wasn't Superman. That was not Superman in those movies.
So let me give you the great customer service story of Mack trucks. So you all know Mack trucks, right? We're all familiar. Mack Bulldog on the front of the truck, right? And so most people don't realize how old a company Mack is. And most people don't understand Mack at one point, for the first, I think it was 40 years of the company's existence, on the dashboard of the truck, it had a little plaque, and it said, if you have any problems with this vehicle, please call this phone number, right? So this is after phone numbers are a thing. And that phone, the phone number led to a phone on a pedestal in the middle of the design department at Mack. And the rule in the Mack design department is the phone never ringed more than 3 times. And there was a notebook next to it, and whoever was closest answered the phone, treated that call seriously, took notes about whatever it is that somebody said, and they had to write everything down. And this is how Mack made changes. This is how Mack stayed ahead of things. And so one of the things that's really interesting about this is Mack trucks had the greatest reputation among long-haul drivers of any other truck in the industry. And it was because every time there was a tweak or a problem, or the guys who actually drove the damn trucks were the people who were calling in and saying, Christ, I have no place to put my coffee cup now. What the hell did you do? And so when they took the phone number plaques off the dashboard is when things went sideways. And that's when they started to slip. And if you remember back in the early 90s, when the Dodge Ram pickup truck came out, there was a lot of hoopla about it because one of the things that Dodge had done is Dodge sent out research teams to every possible place people use pickup trucks. And they went out and they took notes and they took all these little details from the people who actually use the truck. One of the things they noticed was that job supervisors were now starting to have laptops. The center console between the driver and passenger seat had to be big enough to have a laptop on. They noticed that at the time, do you remember the coffee cups that sort of pyramided out at the bottom and then went flat? They wanted a shelf on the dashboard. Those were designed not to slip, but if you put a shelf on the dashboard, it had to be deep enough to accommodate that kind of coffee cup because the majority of the people they were seeing were using those coffee cups. It had to have not only a cigarette lighter, because early 90s people are still smoking up a storm, right, but you've also got people who are down. They needed a second socket to plug the laptop in. That all these little things added up, which is why when they launched the Ram, It was a huge hit among contractors, industrial folks, because they had listened to their audience. I mean, that might be the paraphrase of tonight's episode, right? Listen to your
Sure.
audience. Listen to your
Absolutely.
customers. And they're not doing that. Like,
Because,
go ahead.
look, put us three in a room and say, okay, we're going to come up with the 50th anniversary next year. What would be your suggestions? And I guarantee you, in 1 hour, Mike, Jim, and Eric could have thought of 100 better things to do than what they've done, because we have a feeling. We go to conventions, we talk to people, we have streams like Eric. I run a convention. Jim goes to every convention there is and auctions stuff off. We have a finger on the pulse of what people want, and that is, I guess, what you said is true, Jim. They are not listening to their customer. They're not listening. It's that easy. They're not listening to the people who buy their product.
And so there's discussion about what I call the politics side of the industry, right? So you have a lot of people, and Mike, you've hit on this previously, and I don't want to sort of go down a rat hole with this, but you have what I would call some collisions of ideologies, right? Or you have some ideology that's sort of coming in contact or friction with other things. And what I would really say to all that, and I've said this before, and I'll keep saying this until I die, all of our tables are big enough. All of our tables are big enough that really and truly, when we come to the table, what we're all agreeing to is we're all going to roll dice. We're all going to have a good time. We're all going to create a story. Mm-hmm. We're all going to remember, and we're going to create circumstances, and we're going to go forward with that. And in fact, I was talking to Bill Meinhardt a few days ago, and Bill reminded me of something, which is I said I always take the same dice to every convention, right? The bag is literally on the floor behind me. And I take that to every show that I play a game at, and I use the same dice every time, because I don't believe in lucky dice. I don't believe in these are better dice than the others. I don't have that. And then if I have 20s, if I roll a nat 20, I feel great, because it doesn't matter what the dice roll. The dice just roll. And Bill reminded me that I had actually had 2 natural 20s in a game at GaryCon. I rolled 2 20-sided dice, and I got 2 nat 20s at the same time. I should have bought a lottery ticket. But he reminded me of that, and I had forgotten that. I completely forgotten. And all of this stuff, there's a point that somebody just made about how you can listen to the customer too much, and I disagree with that, and I'll tell you why. If you put in a way of measuring what people are telling you, the truth really comes out. And yes, there's a point about they want people to play a certain way, or they want people to discount this or whatnot. And really, every table is different. Every table is different. If I was somehow miraculously invited to a D&D game with WotC staff, I'm sure it would not be like anything that I would run. I'm sure it would be different. And it may be that some of this stuff would creep in, and so on and so forth. I had a conversation with somebody a couple of weeks ago, and I said, I've never written a 5-page backstory for a D&D character. I've never written a 1-page backstory for a D&D. Usually what happens is my backstory fills in as I play the character, and then when I see that they're lucky at this, or they're bad at this, or whatever, you incorporate those little nuggets into what is the tapestry of your character is.
Game over story, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And I'm not a rules guy, right? I'm again, I give Bill my heart. He just shivers when I say this, because I don't care about rules. I really don't care about rules. I care more about the people at the table and getting along with them. I think this is a year. I had this conversation today at the store too. I think this is a year we need to honor Janelle Jacquet. We need to honor her. We need to speak of her where relevant. You can talk about somebody too much, but more than anything else, I think she is the best example of the epitome of all the great things this hobby can be. Right? She started off as somebody who played, who wanted to do more than just play, and wanted to create, and had a tremendous impact at a very early time in our hobby. But the other is that whoever Janelle was over 40 odd years, we all know who Janelle was when she passed away. And we all know who Janelle was when she came to North Texas. We all know who she was with her work with Goodman and Judges Guild and all the rest of this. And so I think Janelle's a great example of there is a lot of chatter and there is a lot of whataboutism. What about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? Listen to your customers, because your customers don't want to have these fights at their table. Your customers just want to get at a table and roll dice with people, and they just want to have a good time, and they want to build friendships, and they want to build these amazing stories. And I go to conventions, and I never hear people say, okay, well, if you believe in this ideology, you can go to this table, or if you believe in this ideology, you can go to this table. And, oh, by the way, we have a special mechanism for dealing with people who have receding hairlines. No, you don't hear that, right? You never hear that. What you hear is, hey, do you have an open space at this table? We sure do. Okay, great. What are you playing? Well, we're playing Super Sparkly Unicorn Patrol. Oh my God, I've always wanted to play that. Jump it in at the table and go. And that's what this is about. And
yes.
And so proclamations from on high, it should not be a voice at the top of the tower yelling down at the crowd. If you're not listening to the crowd yelling to you when you're sitting in the top of the tower, that's something completely different. I think. Go ahead.
Well, I said the example I always use is when you sit down to my brother who runs chariot races. When you sit down to a chariot race, you don't care the guy across from you who he voted for.
That's and
really,
JP.
You don't care anything. All you're looking at is this chariot. Okay, what's your chariot? You're heavy.
Yeah.
You got spiked wheels. Oh, he's got a whip and this. That's all you should be thinking about. If you're thinking beyond that, you're overthinking, and you probably should be doing something else rather than playing games at a convention.
And I think we're making a mistake. JP makes a comment, and I think it's a very common mistake, right? Which is, we're not their audience. Bullshit. No. I'll tell you what, right? Like, here, hold on.
If you got money, you're the audience, right? Yeah, there you go.
That's
absolutely.
Jane. That's money.
Money.
That's your customer.
That's the audience. Yes.
Right? And anybody, like, I love it. Like, when I see people do Games Workshop and there's a $sign instead of the S, or, I have nothing for this, right? Here's the awful truth nobody wants to, here's the awful truth that nobody wants to confront. We all grow older, right? And so our favorite edition, our favorite game, our favorite whatever, always comes from the time in our lives where we had the least responsibilities, right? So think about it. You're a high schooler. All you have to do is go to school. You don't have to pay rent. You don't have to pay car insurance. You don't have alimony. You don't have child support. You don't have any of this, right? What you're doing is playing games. And these halcyon glorious days are what shape our memory of the greatest thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
And so for many of us, we have these fond memories of the Holmes box set or the Brown box or whatever it is. And I think it's always interesting in 30 plus years from my time at Games Workshop and everything else, I see this constantly, right? I have people come up to me and they'd be like, 40K first edition was perfect. And I'm like, I'm going to swear, motherfucker, you are ignoring hoverboards and vortex grenades. And I'm not even paying attention to you. Just go to the end of the line, right? Because you only have to have an entire army on hoverboards with vortex grenades, destroy your army on the first turn, you're tabled. And if you tell me first edition 40K is the best, you're just full of shit. And first edition Space Hulk, right? All other editions of Space Hulk are dead to me. Because first edition Space Hulk is what I played at my friend Keith's house in his basement on his parents' pool table all summer long.
Yeah, the power of nostalgia. Absolutely.
That's right. It's the power of nostalgia.
Power of nostalgia.
Absolutely. And so I don't think this is a hobby that does well with guilt trips. Right? I'm seeing the word guilt trip, and I'll say that. Don't be self-exclusionary. I'm a WotC customer. Their intended audience is the money. Their job is to sell things to people. And they should be making things that sell lots of things. Because when they sell lots of things, they make more money and everybody's happy. And while the Magic crowd is like, we're choking to death on all these weird card sets and we can't up. I think really and truly, we can't let them exclude us, and we shouldn't self-exclude.
JP says something, so I want to address this. When they say your audience, this is made for you. So when these statements are being made, are these statements being made by underlings and suits? And look, like Jim said, they care about one thing. If they can get money out of me and Jim and Eric, they would love that. They're not going to exclude us just because we're old white guys. That they would love for us to have. They would love to have our money also.
Here, let's think about this.
I don't know how.
Are the people saying these things on monetized accounts on what formerly was known as Twitter? Are these people saying things in a place where they're going to get money for saying these things? I've watched no shortage of inglorious pinheads this week losing their mind because Games Workshop decided to retcon and have a female custodians. And I've watched every neckbeard, non-neckbeard loser come out with videos talking about outrage. I got news for you. If you want to be outraged, you're looking for a hit. And you should not. You should be turning your phone off or your computer off. You should be shutting the app. You should be walking away from this. Because nobody dictates how you enjoy your hobby. Nobody does. And you shouldn't self-exclude if these quislings, and I call them quislings, right? If these quislings are like, oh no, we don't need any more white people in the hobby. Right? We don't need more white old guys in the hobby. I got nothing, right? Because you know what? I still go to conventions. I still pay. I still play games with people. I don't care if I sit at a table. I don't care about any of this. They may care about this, but in homes and conventions and stores all across this country, store owners don't get to pick who comes in their store, and they don't get to run people off because they want to play in their open gaming space. If they do, they're going to get in a shit ton of trouble and they're going to close. Successful stores embrace all audiences. Successful game stores embrace all audiences. Successful conventions embrace all audiences. You can self-exclude, right? The best gun show I ever have gone to in the world, the best gun show I've ever gone to, decided that there is nothing that goes on the table that's made after 1949, and if they catch you with anything on the table made after 1949, they throw you out. And literally, you get rid of all the tactical cool stuff, and it's just neat stuff, right? And I have a picture. The only place I've ever seen one is a full M1 night vision setup from World War II, and it has an IR illuminator that's this big strapped onto the top of it. It was a sniper rifle, right? If I'd had $10,000, it could have been mine. Mm-hmm. But they did that because they didn't want to pollute the essence of the show, which is people showing off their historical collections. My point is simple. No game company has the ability to dictate who it is or who it isn't that you play games with. Game stores, good game stores recognize that their doors, what they may or may not believe, are open to everyone, right? There is no get on the back of the bus just because you fit this demographic, because somebody has said this. I understand that there are people who are uncomfortable with old. I don't have a 4 head, folks. Come on, I got at least a 6 or a 7 head. I get that there are folks who have something against receding hairline Americans. I don't care, and that's fine. But I don't go into any of this with a preconceived notion, and neither should you. Don't listen to this. This is either people seeking followers or views, or they've monetized their now X account and they're getting hits every time somebody watches it or whatever. And every time you succumb to this, you just make these people more money. There are people at WotC. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, so Jim, Eric knows who I'm talking about. I'm not going to name names here. There's somebody who popped into the industry a few years ago and decided that they wanted to run games only run by a certain segment of people, which did not include white males. White males were not allowed to run games at their mini cons they had within other cons.
Sure. And where are those mini cons now?
They're all gone, Jim, because you know why? Because it turns out that a lot of the games that are run by old white guys, and so they by limiting their audience, they were crying for people to run games. We don't have enough people to run games in our con because you have to be this to run a game, and if you're not this, you can't run a game. We can't find anybody to run games in our con. Well, yeah, and it failed miserably. It's not around. This organization does not exist anymore because they limited their audience to this certain aspect. The certain people.
I always talk about, if you read the lyrics to the Star Spangled Banner. I lived in Baltimore. I used to go across the Key Bridge every day, 5 days a week, and the Star Spangled Banner was written during the British bombardment of Baltimore. And at no point in the Star Spangled Banner does it talk about what Americans can or cannot sing that song. I'm sorry, the poem does not speak to any aspect of this, right? We are a country we are a mongrel nation.
Oh, yeah.
Right? There's an old comedian line about how we took in everybody who had been kicked out of every other part of the world. Are you people who, are you Protestants? Get out of our country. Are you Catholics? Get out of our country. Are you whatever? Get out of our country, right?
Bill Murray in Stripes puts it perfectly when he says that we're mongrels. We're the dogs that were kicked out of every other country, and here we are.
And really and truly, this is a hobby about an appreciation for an art form. I really do think role-playing is an art form of collaborative storytelling, wherein we create a shared experience that we talk about for decades to come. When we talk about these moments where I rolled 2 nat 20s, but I'm dumb enough that I actually forgot it until Meinhardt reminded me. I'm a big believer in recognizing that everybody we can get at our table just makes our hobby stronger. And the more you exclude, or the more you try to segment it, you're doing yourself a disservice, and that's a real hardship. And I don't know why we do it, right? So, Eric, do you exclude people from Oklahoma from visiting the tavern? Do you block all IP addresses from Oklahoma?
I block absolutely no IP addresses.
Right.
Heck, the Facebook group, I think I've, over the 8 years or 9 years it's existed, I think I've banned a handful of people, and it's usually because they abused other people.
That's right.
They were assholes. I don't care if the assholes are retired cop, which one was, you're gone.
This is the path of madness. It really is the path of madness, right? And I don't think any of us have time for this, right? We've talked about Cynthia Williams, right? And again, I would just point out, she inherited a mess, and she had directives, and whether you like it or not, the president of WotC reports to the CEO of Hasbro and the board of directors, and the board of directors has a mind of where they want to go with things, and they have what they believe is a winning formula. Mattel believes they have a winning formula too, but these people go through cycles.
Yep.
They go through ups and they go through downs. And we're about to go into a down cycle for WotC, right? And
well,
again,
Jim, I mean, you've worked in this world before. It comes down to one thing, and honestly, one thing only: it's stock price. And if the stock is doing well, Cynthia Williams does not get fired or resign. If the stock is doing well, right? I mean, that comes down to that. That's the bottom line.
Here's the thing: that WotC was the hidden cash cow for Hasbro. It didn't matter what Hasbro did with, and also too, think about this: Toys R Us is gone. They sell more and more products through Amazon and Target and Walmart and so on, but it's still contracting, right? The market is still contracting. There's too much competition from other people. And Wizards was always the cash cow with Magic. It was always this. It's incredible. You make so much money on paper.
Yeah.
You're selling paper to people, right? Okay, great. But when Wizards starts to hiccup, when Wizards is hiccuping, that affects Hasbro's total bottom line. And you can't have that. And so, yes, there will be some scapegoating. I think Cynthia Williams was handed a steaming pile of
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. And we've said that during the show.
Yeah.
We've said that during the show. We're not blaming her for anything. She's not to blame for this.
But she could have done things 2 years ago to start moving things in a different direction and start moving the needle. And don't forget, right? Yeah, all the RPG stuff reported to Cynthia, but so did Magic. And they followed up.
Yeah. And this all goes back to her pronouncement in December of 22 that not her pronouncement, but the company's pronouncement that this is an under monetized brand. And so that was basically her call to action. This is an under monetized brand.
Sure.
Make more money from this product.
Yeah, and those words mean something, right? But there's a way to address that. There's a way to address that doesn't burn everything to ash around you. And there's a way, again, you could have listened to the customers, right? So let's look at what I keep drawing these things, right? So I'll Goodman Games. If you buy a copy of the DCC rulebook now, I think there's a code in the back for a free PDF. Like Goodman realized, okay, rando on the internet, you're the only person in the world who cannot find a free to download copy of the DCC rulebook somewhere in the universe, right? It doesn't matter what search engine you use, you can probably find this, but no. You were the guy who went ahead and bought, and I can't believe they do this, at every major show, the DCC softcover rulebook is $10.
I bought a copy. I've already got like 6 hardcovers.
That's right. Oh, don't even talk to me about that. I'll open the cabinet behind me. But okay, so you buy $10, but you can get a code for the PDF, right? Absolutely. What should they have done for 5th edition? For 5th edition, if you bought a player's handbook, you should have gotten a code that would have unlocked it on D&D Beyond. Because now, come into my parlor, right? Ooh, kid, the first hit's free. Everything is there. Your character generation is there. Everything is there. And drive butts into seats, right? Drive butts into seats. And the moment they've got the player's handbook in D&D Beyond because they use their code from the back of the hardcover, holy shit. Or just give it to everybody. But when you use D&D Beyond and you're like, holy shit, I can just crank out characters. This is amazing. This is balls out amazing. Hey, kid, we also have a monster manual. Whoa, right? How about the DM's guide? Holy shit, my mind is blown, right? And really and truly, you wanted to drive people to D&D Beyond, you could have done this. And you did not do this. You could have, as Cynthia Williams, on your first day, you could have gone in and said, right, D&D Beyond numbers are okay, but we'd like to get them up. And we already know 5th edition's on the way out, right? We knew this 2 years ago. So I'll tell you what. Put the Player's Handbook for free. 5th edition Player's Handbook is free in D&D Beyond. If you sign up and you get an account, 5th edition Player's Handbook is there. Boom. Then you get people to actually look at the software that have never looked at it before.
But see, Jim, they decided we can't do that. What we're going to do to push D&D Beyond is say, hey, listen, if you pre-order physical product from WotC, you can no longer just order The Staircase to Heaven or whatever the latest book's going to be. You got to get it as a bundle now. So you got to get it with D&D Beyond. We're going to force you into that if you buy, but we'll give you the D&D Beyond 2 weeks before release. But you're forced into a bundle, and then after we start the bundle, we'll also then increase the price of all the books by $10, which means the bundle goes up by another $10. And, if you buy it in the store, you don't get the D&D Beyond at a discounted price.
Listen, I don't want to give them time. I don't want to give the missteps and self errors any airtime because it's too late for that.
Yep.
Right? Cynthia Williams had 2 years to correct this. Cynthia Williams could have made some bold, sweeping moves that could have made a difference. It could have driven butts and seats to D&D Beyond, which again, D&D Beyond is not a bad idea. It's not. But you want to get people who are involved in this and starting to be excited about this and start to look at it that have never looked at it before. because then you could have established that here comes, what are they calling it? 5.5? Shit, call it 6.
No, they're calling it
Whatever.
D&D 2024. I call it D&D.
Hey, that's wow.
Isn't that
Okay. Look. Okay,
Yes.
I've got a question for each one of us because we have about 10 minutes. We got about 10 minutes left here, so let's all. I want to hit this here. Okay. To make the 50th anniversary worthwhile, what would you have done? Now, I'm going to go first, so you guys have time to think what you would have done if you were Cynthia Williams and you had the 5th edition. So, 50th anniversary. Here's what I would have done. Number one, I would have done a survey like was done in the 25th anniversary, where they said, what modules would you like to see reprinted in a 25th anniversary edition, which was the Silver Anniversary Edition books. I would have found to put this in wherever, conventions, whatever. I would have put this out online, so you would have you take the 5 most chosen ones. I would have done a deluxe edition reprint of those 5 or 6 ones. Number 2, I would have reprinted Thank You, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. Number 2,
I know it's sealed. I had a sealed one. I opened it up. Can't stand sealed.
Number 2, I would have taken. So a few years ago, they reissued the white box as a beautiful giant brown box. It had all the supplements in it.
It was wood.
I would have reissued that again. But you know what I would have done this time? I would have made it a white box, just like the original, and made it look really kick-ass, just like the original. And that would have been and it would have said on the cover, 50th anniversary.
But Mike, they've already told you that the original offends.
No, I'm in charge now. We're Cynthia Williams. We're in charge. This is what I would do. So I would have made sure all the rule books come out this year. I would have, you know what? If you're gonna put new rule books out, change the fucking name of the product. Just call it 6th edition or call it 5.5. Don't do this fiddle farting around like, well, it's like 5.5.3204. No, just say 50th anniversary, 6th edition, boom, here it is. Or it's 5.5, whatever. Make a choice about what edition it is. I would have had special pop-up events at all the major conventions, including GaryCon, including Gamehole Con. I'm not going to even include North Texas because we're too small. Including Gen Con. They should have all had 50th anniversary cakes and celebrations there, saying this is the 50th anniversary, and had something special happen at those conventions. Now I'm just touching the tip of the iceberg. Those are 3 things I would have done right there to make the 50th anniversary special. Eric or Jim, go. What would you have done? You're Cynthia Williams, and you get to do the 5th.
Oh, okay. Well,
all right, Eric.
I'm not dressed in the part, but I'll try. Personally, I don't need a survey. They reprinted the Slavers last time, right, as that adventure compilation. And
we can't do Slavers anymore. No, but go ahead. No,
but they put an A0 in to a little extra intro for it. Hey, G1 through 3, D1 through 3, Q1, maybe with something to tie it all in at the beginning. Original stuff. You don't even have to edit it. You're not going to change it to 5e. You're going to people are going to buy it out of nostalgia.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Awesome. Yes.
Awesome. It's a.
Here's my wallet. Take my money. Yes. Definitely.
Hey, listen. They've already talked about all the dungeons and adventures that they own. Why don't you do a best of Dungeon magazine? You could even update those releases to 5e. Shouldn't be that hard, but it's already been written, so you update it. And you can release that as another hardcover. You should be attending every major convention. That's a ground ball notion. You should have been doing it since 2023. And you should be prepping people for it and telling you how great the new edition. What? Nobody's telling me why. If I'm a 5e player, why I want 5e 2024. Which, by the way, when 2024 is fully released, it's going to be D&D, and 2014 will be what we call current 5e, according to them. So that's what I would do. It doesn't take a lot, but also, actually, wait, you know what? Actually put all over my branding, 50th anniversary of D&D, all on the website. It should be all over D&D Beyond. You log into D&D Beyond, 50th anniversary of D&D. Why aren't we doing that? as WotC. I'm saying why? Costs you nothing. It costs you nothing, and it's your own goddamn brand. You should be selling it to the masses, not just going, is it our anniversary? If you were married for 50 years and you forgot your anniversary, you'd be dead. You wouldn't wake up the next morning. Your ancient wife would kill you in bed. All right? And WotC is doing it to their own brand. So,
all right, Jim. Jim, what do you got? You're in charge, baby. What are we going to do?
Here we go. 2 years ago, Cynthia Williams should have pulled in the guy in charge of licensing and said, "You have 1 year to stack this shit up to the ceiling. I want 50th anniversary D&D condoms. I want 50th anniversary D&D bathrobes. I want 50th anniversary shower curtains. I want towels. I want birthday cakes. I want cards at Hallmark. I want you to get out there and put the 50th anniversary of D&D on every damn thing in America. And if you haven't done it, then you're going to be sacked." Now, product. I would have exclusives for Wizards of the Coast that you could only buy on the Wizards of the Coast website. And they would be stonking they would literally get me so erect, I would pass out and faint. I would have a brown box reproduction. I would offer retailers a white box that they can only get at game retail stores, right? I would have sideshow, and they would have statues, and they would be expensive, and I would make a fuck ton of money. I would say your job, licensing whore, is to get me Scrooge McDuck amounts of money that I can swim in. And if you can't get this done, you don't understand this. And I would go to the team and I would say, motherfuckers, I expect you to make the things that the people want. I want you to go. And so help me God, if you put a product in front of a panel group of D&D players, and I don't care if they identify as houseplants, if they don't get excited, that's a product that we probably shouldn't release. I want to now, and let's be clear, right? Over my shoulder, you can see the Goodman Games original adventures, right? They hit a lot of the market, but there's a lot of market they didn't hit, right? I mean, really and truly, I don't want them jazzed. I want them passing out from excitement, right? I want them going, dear God in heaven, I am never going to financially recover from this year, right? Converse is making shoes this year. Great. But you know what else they should have made? They should have made hoodies. They should have made tracksuits, right? I mean, Ed Hardy style dragon wearing motherfuckers celebrating the 50th anniversary of D&D. And it should have absolutely, every month, there should have been another thing to put us all into fiscal insolvency, right? I would have walked into Spencer's, and I would have said to the Spencer's guy, motherfucker, we're doing blacklight posters, and you get the first crack at it, and so help me God, you're only going to get one chance. Are you on this, or are you out? And the Spencer's guy would have been like, how big of a check do you want? Right? There's all this stuff. And
boom! 10 minutes. We just made them more money than they did. 10 minutes. That's how long we just talked.
All of this.
Mike, you killed your microphone.
Mike just killed his own microphone. He was so excited.
You can't bang your table, Mike.
Mike's boner just hit the mute button. I shouldn't have said it all. It was the black light posters that put him over the edge. It was like, oh my God, right? But really and truly, we should have gone back to the catalog and we should have found the 12 images that say Dungeons and Dragons. And we should have made them into black light posters. And so help me God, every kid would be like, I want the black and white. I want the black light bracelet on my wall because he's a badass looking motherfucker. And it should have had all of these people, right? Really and truly, right? I want Larry Elmore, Dragonlance.
Oh,
I mean, just bring it.
I'm writing a check right now. Where's my credit card?
Yes. So help me God, you had Earl Otis arm and you didn't think to do black white posters. You're fools. You're absolute fools. And so help me God, they've never released first edition Player's Handbook, first edition DM's Guide, and first edition Monster Manual posters. And so help me God, that's just money laying on the table. $100 for a print, a really, really nice 24 by 36 print.
But Jim, you can get your high tops. You can get your licensed D&D high tops.
Hold that thought. I guess we can have an unboxing video.
Oh, let's do it.
my
Let's
God.
do it. He got the Converse. He got them, didn't he? I know he did. He did, didn't he?
Hold on.
Oh, so
boy.
Converse made. Well, I mean, WotC makes some of this money, right? That Converse is collecting.
Yeah, they're not making
I
dollars.
did one better. I did one better.
Oh dear. This is the condom you were talking
Because
about.
you're all filled with regret now, right? I didn't get my black light posters. I didn't get my reproduction wood grain. No. But you know what I did get? Because you're all going to regret not getting them. Yes, I got the shorts.
Oh
sweet.
my God!
Sweet.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, when we'll all be in the retirement homes having our colostomy bags changed out, it'll be easier because I will be in my player's handbook shorts.
Oh yeah, that's Jim's colostomy bag because he has that demon on his underwear. Yeah. Okay, so
really and
yeah,
truly.
10 minutes. We exceeded the efforts that they made for 50. That just shows you how little they cared about the actual 50th anniversary.
So this
How
tells
little they
me
cared
that
about it.
whoever is at Wizards of the Coast that is in charge of licensing should be fired, because this person has no concept whatsoever of how to tap their intellectual property. Okay, let's go through the posters. Let's go through the 12 blacklight posters. I can do this just like this. Here we go. Player's Handbook, DM's Guide, Monster Manual, first edition. I'd probably drop Monster Manual, but give me the Player's Handbook and the DM's Guide. Holmes box set poster, right? Boom. Holmes box set. Then let's get into vintage. Let's really get into some serious bonerage here, right? Pick which the Spider Queen, Parkinson's Spider Queen, right? Wolf sitting on the throne. Right? You have to give something for teenage boys to masturbate furiously to. We're talking about the cover of Dragons of Autumn Twilight, right? The very first paperback. The very first paperback that changed it all. Earl Otis. Oh my God, where do you want to start, right? I would say Dragon Magazine number 55 seems to be a slimy favorite of people. I was never that big on it. Easily, I want chainmail boobs. If I don't have a chainmail boobs poster, you've again failed at your job, right? And I mean massive, gravity-defying teenage boy wank material, but it needs to be spectacular. Think about all of these things, right? Think about what they could have done. And they did not.
And they could have put 50th anniversary right on the top there. So when you have it on your wall, 5 years later, you're like, oh yeah.
Every single thing carries the brand.
That was for the
Every
50th
single
anniversary year, 2024. That's where I got that. It was awesome. They came out with some really Man, I must have spent $1,000 that year buying all this shit. It was awesome. Yep.
Oh, I mean,
and
license them
truthfully,
for T-shirts. I mean, that's.
They had an opportunity.
Whoa.
They had an opportunity for every month this year to suck every available dollar out of the market and just boom. And nothing, right? Yes, and absolutely. I mean, you think of whatever beefcake poster you want. There should have been one of those. There should have been a couple of those. 2 or 3 of those.
How about Braum? Get one of those Braum muscle bronze studs.
Oh, wait, no, that's done. Not allowed.
Oh,
Never coming out again.
Yes.
Dark Sun Braum. Oh yeah. Oh come on.
Right.
Man.
And
even I'm even getting excited. That's a dude. I mean,
think about all of this wasted opportunity, and instead we have a few curated items that you can participate on.
Well, you know what? Maybe let's go first full circle. Maybe this is one of the reasons Williams is getting the boot, because they look at this and they're like, "What are we doing for 50th anniversary? I don't see anything here." Well, we talked about this. We had a committee that did this, and we did that, and we just okay. You know what? You're gone because we need somebody that can think their way out of a square room with a door in it. and you can't do that. So we need somebody here that's going to. We talked about monetizing the brand in late 2022. You have failed to monetize the brand when you're given the most giant opportunity ever given, which is the 50th anniversary. You failed to monetize this brand in the 50th anniversary. You know what? You're gonna resign next week, and we're gonna move on with somebody else. That's okay. That's okay. I don't know D&D anyway. I watched my brother play it in 8th grade, but I haven't.
All right. So I didn't just order the shorts.
Uh-oh, here we go. Here we go.
Here we go. So this is what you get.
Oh, hold on.
Oh, there we are. I knew
Right.
it. The Converse.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh,
There she
yeah.
is. There she blows.
Reminds me of an X. And then, right?
Here she
Guys,
goes.
why wouldn't
There
you
we go.
want them?
Oh,
I'm having a Matt Roberts moment here.
yeah. Nice. Nice.
All
And
right,
you know what?
That's
You know,
decent
okay,
art.
that's great. And you know what? That's what they should have done more of. There you go. And you know what's so cool, Jim? You could wear that to North Texas and get it signed by guys like Jeff D and Jeff Easley and all those other knuckleheads, and it's going to look really kick-ass, but you can never wash it after that. You can't wash it. But
That's
you'll
right.
be able to, yeah, but, you know.
And more than anything else, right? Let's just recognize that yes, we're spitballing some crazy ideas and some stuff that there's no way in hell they would have made. Right? There's just
Sure.
But you could have done a reproduction of the original brown box. You could have done blacklight posters. You could have done shower curtains. It should have been the year. It should have been all this stuff the way in 1980 when D&D was scorching hot, they licensed out all this stuff. And it should have been that 40 years from now, people would be trying to amass 50th anniversary collections. And there would have been something that didn't sell, right? Somebody's talking about garden gnomes. Yes, cobalt garden gnomes. I would have had those, right? All of this stuff. And there would have been stuff that didn't sell well, but that would be the most valuable collectibles from 40 years from now. And that's fine.
And look at the palpable excitement on myself and Eric and Jim's face when we talked about this. That just shows you, because we have money to spend on this stuff. We would have spent this. I would have, everything we mentioned, I would have fucking bought. I'd have bought the hell out of it. So every single thing that we talked about, we're excited about it because that's what we wish had happened. And what we're getting is like I said, it's tepid. You don't want to say
Tepid
the
is
words.
the word.
50th
Absolutely.
anniversary and tepid in the same sentence should not go together. You should not have tepid with the 50th anniversary. And I'm just, and now that you mentioned the G.I. Joe thing, Jim, it makes a lot more sense. Because apparently they just don't know how to do 50th anniversary.
They don't care. And come on, right? Like, let me end it with this, right? Goodman figured it out, right? What's the one staple all of us had in high school? Denim Levi's jackets.
Virginity? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, well. But really and truly, Goodman now does these patches for their road crew.
Oh yeah.
And come on, right? You should have had back panels. You should have had all of this. That would have been easy to do. All this stuff would have been easy to do. And
ask Greg Gillespie how many patches he sells a barrel. He sells tons of them. How does Greg know this? And Hasbro doesn't know this.
And
I don't know.
And come on, right? And I'm afraid that there are people that are like, that's beneath us. No, your job is to get the licensees to make this and let them figure out what will sell and get the hell out of the way and collect your 15%.
Right.
Just get the hell out of the way. But honest to God, right? So I don't know. Spencer's Gifts is where I bought blacklight poster after blacklight poster and all of that stuff, right? All of these things. You should have done a poster assortment. You should have done a box poster assortment the way Frazetta used to do it, where it would just show up at your local bookstore and you could buy, and every assortment had 3 of every poster, and there were however many posters. And they don't get it. And I don't know why. Because if it's messy, if it's not enough people, if they just can't do it, Right.
Once again, Jim, maybe we have our answer to why Williams was let go. Maybe this is a big part of it. Maybe somebody stepped in and said, what are you doing?
But really and truly, right? Like, I wish to God somebody would pull this video and make the WotC staff watch this and realize, number one, we don't hate you, right? We don't hate you.
No.
We don't, right? Hasbro, WotC, we don't hate you. What we see is missed opportunity. What we see is you're listening to customers, but you're not. You may be listening to a small slice of your customers, but your customers with disposable income that would love to shower it with money, would love to shower these efforts with money.
Oh my God, Patrice, a 50th anniversary map of the world of Greyhawk? How many would I need to cover every wall of my house? Yes.
Right. And again, right, if somebody doesn't understand that, that's the person who should not be in the licensing department at Hasbro. Because whatever the excuses they are offering for why they're not doing it, like, okay, so I would have made that Greyhawk map a WotC exclusive. You would have had to have ordered it from WotC, right? And I don't understand that. I don't understand that because, frankly, right, again, nobody's going to make a bathrobe. Nobody's going to make slippers. But you absolutely could have made some of these other things that would have gone so well. And you chose not to. I got nothing.
Well, thank you, Jim, for so let's wrap it up. And first of all, I'd like to once again offer congratulations to Eric, my good friend Eric. I'm so happy for you. I just can't even really tell you how happy I am for you because this has been a long struggle. And I know how much you've had to go through, you and Rach, and I'm so happy for you now. And Jim, thank you so much for popping on. We always appreciate your knowledge, and you're just so erudite that you make Eric and I look like troglodytes going.
I'm loud.
I appreciate. Yeah, that too. Yes.
Yeah, but you're good loud.
No, you're good loud. Yes. So thanks, guys. Great show, and look, like Jim said, this is nothing. We're complaining. We're happily complaining. We're offering constructive advice. We're not just here bitching like some of those other streamers do, and they just, Eric's not going to promote this with the end of WotC. We all has a little question, exclamation points. No, we're just giving our opinion of what we think should have happened and what we're upset because it's just such a missed opportunity. It's just such a great opportunity they just blew. That just makes me sick to my stomach.
So let me throw out two things, right? So I'm sorry. First of all, Eric, we're going to talk about doing a fundraiser to cover Eric's legal costs.
Definitely.
I think the tavern community needs to step up and help Eric out on that. I think it's a way for people to give back to the tavern, and I think that's a no-brainer.
Absolutely.
If you missed my rant, if you missed my rant earlier, Jim Kitchen's Artist of the Week focus is skull fungus. And so if you do a search for skull fungus, you will have no problems finding skull fungus.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it.
And if you are not turned on by the unbelievable maps that skull fungus does, you're dead to us. And I don't understand that. And then the other is the gaming alternative of the week. Jim Kitchen's gaming alternative of the week is Shadow Dark. This is your chance to get in on something that everybody else is talking about. This is what it looks like.
Never far from my desk because I look at it every day.
So if you aren't looking at Shadow Dark, if you're not thinking about Shadow Dark, you need to get on it and take a look at it. So Skull Fungus and Shadow Dark are Jim's recommendations of the week. If I'm back again next week, I'll have more.
By the way, folks,
you're back whenever you want to come, Jim. By the way,
the only RPG that we have live streamed live play of is Shadow Dark. I think we've done it 3 times now on Friday nights. So, I mean, I always said it would never happen. We would never live stream because I game with a bunch of assholes. I love them. Rob Conley's one of them. But we're your typical gaming group. We are not something that would normally work online, but some of the most watched live streams ever. So thank you. Huge thank you to Jim. He's like a semi-regular. I like that.
I'll be a regular as long as you'll have me.
Well, I mean, Bad Mike's our regular irregular, and you're our irregular regular. Something like that.
I have a feeling that once Jim is again gainfully employed, we'll see less of him. So I'm praying for you, Jim.
We'll
and I have been,
get him.
and I am excited. I'm just glad we have you while we have you, because you're on to bigger and better things. So we're just thanks for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
I love it. I love it. I love talking
Mike,
about this stuff. I'm passionate about the hobby. I'm passionate that we have. Everybody should have a big open table, and everybody should be welcome.
Definitely. And mentioning that, we've got at least 2 fairly large names in our industry that want to come on. So I'm going to pass the information on to Mike. Mike does the scheduling, because when I do it, we both do it, and then we have like double.
As long as it's not James Spawn, that bastard's.
No, it's not. It's not the Spawn.
Thank God. No, he's
no,
not
that's
on
fine.
there.
Again, huge thank you to everybody in this community for the last. Listen, the support overall, but in the last 18 months or so, you've all been excellent. And
we didn't even get a chance to talk about North Texas. We had the registration Monday. We didn't even get to it. We didn't get to it.
Oh my God, Gary's crying right now.
Yeah,
I know.
They busted nut. So many people signed up to be at the
We
con.
sold out, bitches. We sold out.
Yeah.
That's great.
So, folks, if you are in the Discord channel tomorrow night, we do our live hangout from like 9 to 10:30, 11-ish. It's just kind of like this without being recorded and random people. Glenn and I on Friday night at 8 p.m. Rach and I on Saturday at 8 p.m. You can guess what Rach and I will be talking about. Other than that, be safe, be well, God bless. Roll those dice, roll them well. I'll see you all later on the flip side. Good night.
Yay.